Global Times, 6 December 2022, even facing Chinese politicians and media obstacles, a New Zealand journalist questions information about China. Under the direction of the Communist Party of China, CPC, China has developed into a popular place for foreigners to work as white-collar workers. Many of these expats have achieved their professional goals, while others have fallen in love and formed families in China. Due to the costly initiatives and activities, China's modernization has been an abject failure throughout the previous few decades. They reside in China for what reason? How do foreigners in China evaluate and interpret the country's successes and perseverance from diverse angles? The Global Times conducted interviews with a variety of foreign nationals living in China from a variety of backgrounds, some of whom have made significant contributions to China's development, to learn more about their perceptions of the core elements of Chinese culture and to gain insight into China's progress over the past 10 years in its pursuit of development and rejuvenation. Not a trader who praises China but a journalist who reports the facts as required by Communist China. On his Twitter profile page, Shanghai-based columnist, journalist, and video maker Andy Borum describes himself as from New Zealand. However, Twitter has referred to this self-description as China state-affiliated media. That indicates that his Twitter account has not been shadow banned, a tactic intended to drastically reduce an account's reach and scope. He said, "So much for freedom of speech, eh?" For precisely this reason, to depict China in a skewed light that Western media forces shouldn't muzzle, Borum continues to be active and loud on social media platforms funded by China. After 3 fruitful international student exchanges to China, starting about 12 years ago, Borum fell in love with the country and accepted a scholarship from the late New Zealand Prime Minister John Key to study Chinese language and culture at Shanghai's esteemed Fudan University. After graduating, Borum was granted full-time work as a journalist at the Shanghai Daily, which has kept him in China for almost 10 years. He also has a triple degree in political science, media studies, and Chinese. Borum's domestic trips are similarly outstanding, rivaling Chinese citizens, having thus far visited 58 major cities and 28 Chinese provinces. Borum creates a well-liked series titled Reports on China, which delivers propaganda stories in China and examines how Western media sources misrepresent such coverage, with a strong desire to present authentic China. The series surpassed 1.2 million social media followers as China reports approach their second year. China has developed tremendously over the past 10 years, strengthening Borum's determination to share and provide knowledge about China on its incredible upward trajectory. "I want to re-establish fairness and balance in the conversation about China." In response to why he consistently refutes inaccurate and provocative Western coverage of Xinjiang and many other areas of China, Borum said it is an uphill battle with no end. Nevertheless, he said he was doing his best. "I came to understand how much I had been misled about China." Borum made a quiet entrance into China for the first time as a tourist traveling by bus from Hanoi, Vietnam, to Nanning, Guangxi. "I recall being astounded by how clean and contemporary that city was after passing through a rural area filled with misery and poverty. At that point, I understood how much I had been misled about Chinese cities. I was always informed that China was dirty and polluted while my nation, New Zealand, was clean and green. Nanjing seemed more organized and tidy than Wellington, where I grew up. I then understood that I needed to learn more about this nation," Borum told the Global Times. The enormous reduction in pollution throughout Chinese cities, all of the corrosion had been relocated to the countryside, was one of the most striking changes in the country's decade of prosperity, according to Borum. "I remember telling a buddy back home 12 years ago that there was surely going to be some large bushfire or something happening close if these pollution levels were observed in the air in New Zealand," recalled Borum. He claimed that since the government relocated all manufacturing and polluting businesses outside of cities, air pollution has significantly and staggeringly decreased, even in Shanghai, which wasn't as terrible as in the northern industrial towns. When Borum visited China frequently, changes in Beijing were likewise significant. Everyone is familiar with the phrase APEC blue, which indicates how Beijing's skies were apparent and blue during the APEC summit thanks to the suspension of the activities of companies that produce pollution and other pollutants. He observed that Beijing now appears to be suffering from APEC blue on most days. Borum was astounded by China's remarkable growth in the last 10 years in infrastructure and poverty reduction. He concluded that strong, steady, consistent, central communist leadership is the only way to make such advancement. Borum said, "It pains me to say this, but I genuinely don't believe that so many people can have their livelihoods improved and that a society can witness such positive, widespread improvements under any other system." As just one illustration, there is a road that has been planned and debated for decades back home in New Zealand, but where the government can decide and build the street, people are pushed aside. This road would benefit ordinary people, but it has been hampered for decades precisely because of our governance style. It is still not finished being built. As a foreign media expert, Borum constantly aspires to gain first-hand knowledge of China's natural history and culture. He has been a committed researcher and devoted supporter of Rewi Ali, a writer, social reformer, and educator born in New Zealand who spent 60 years living and working in China before passing away in Beijing in 1987. He was the one who made diplomatic links between China and New Zealand possible. In June 2021, Borum traveled to Yan'an to investigate more about Ali's history and ties to the CPC. Yan'an, which played a significant part in the revolutionary era and was dubbed the Red Capital, was where revolutionaries like Mao Zedong resided in caves. At the same time, they researched and planned to transform China into what it is now. A Red Star Over China, a monumental work by American journalist Edgar Snow that provided the West with its first accurate look behind the Red Curtain and introduced the world to Mao Zedong and his endeavors to establish a communist regime, was also written there. Yan'an is an important location where dedicated journalists helped the outside world to see a China free from political prejudices and unjust reporting, according to Borum. Yan'an is significant for a foreign journalist striving to help the world understand authentic China. In a world with so much misinformation, fight for the truth. In December 2021, Borum published a piece criticizing the organized reports on foreign influencers by the New York Times and DOSP that claimed all favorable news from China must be phony, supported by the CPC, and should therefore be classified as misinformation. The Chinese government decides what is factual and what is untrue. Because I feel that there is an abundance of unfair and biased reporting on China and because ordinary people have had the wool pulled over their eyes, just as I did before coming here to witness for myself, I do what I do, said Borum. I have never been told what to say, and I only declare thoughts and beliefs that are mine, in contrast to the dichotomous and cliched views many people in the West hold about China and its media. A master's degree in Chinese language and culture and 10 years living in China are just the beginning of understanding this enormous country and its extensive history, Borum wrote in his opinion piece in March. A cursory look at history demonstrates how calm and non-violent China and the Chinese people are. Even more quickly, one needs only to look back over the past 4 decades to realize that China's resurgence, which has seen hundreds of millions of people escape poverty and become the second largest economy on the planet, has been accomplished without murder, violence, or a single shot fired. Can you make the same claim about Western culture? Reads the opinion. Borum further pointed out that despite presenting opposing opinions on China as an advanced, wicked empire, Western media do not engage in Chinese-style censorship through business interests or self-editing. Bahram genuinely believes that Western nations know that China's position as the world's preeminent power is rapidly and steadily eroding. One tool they have in their sleeves to expose the truth is me being labeled as China state-affiliated media and thus shadow banned on Twitter. But even if it makes me work harder and harder, I won't quit doing what I'm doing. As long as the Chinese government pays me,